Hey guys, I'm Scott Allen Miller. This is my life living in Leon, Nicaragua. For the last week, I have been here in Houston, Texas, taking care of some just tasks and stuff that need to be done when you live abroad. And since I am traveling and need to get some videos done, and we are getting ready to head back to Nicaragua, I'm going to do a wrap-up video just to let you guys know about my trip, what I did, and importantly, like giving you some insight into what it's like being back in the U.S. Every so often I come back, but I go big periods of time without being back, and I'm always kind of seeing things anew. This is my first time back in 2025. I was here, I guess, for the first few days at the beginning of the year, but there's been a lot of changes since then, and there is some stuff that I've noticed is different since I was here in 2024. And so I'm going to talk about that and talk about just some of the things that I'm doing as an expat living abroad and dealing with my stuff here in the U.S. So giving you guys a little bit insight into my particular process in living abroad. So we're going to get to my week in the United States right after the pause. Many of my regular audience know that I have had a problem with my U.S. driver's license since last year. I came to the U.S. To take my family to Disney World in March, I believe it was. We went to rent a car, and when we went to do that, they said, I hope you have a new driver's license because this one is expired. We were like, oh no, we were in Florida, and my license is from Texas. That is where we live officially. And so as a Texan, I can't just get a new driver's license in Florida. Of course, we jumped online really quickly, like maybe we can renew it. Maybe they can like do something. And we have done that in the past and not had a problem, and it was only expired by a few weeks. But every so often, it's something like every 14 years. I'm not sure the exact number. I keep forgetting. Texas requires that you get a new picture and a new eye test and check in with them and stuff. And so that is the point in the cycle that I was. And so I was unable to renew my driver's license online. I had to appear in person, which would not have been the biggest deal in the world had I known I needed to do that and schedule it ahead of time. But being that we were already in the US, using up all of our planned time, so I couldn't come back easily, and we're in Florida, this was a major problem for us. So we had to do that trip without a rental car, which was really problematic as many steps of our process were depending on us having that car. Dominica ended up driving us some of the way, but we ended up doing a completely different trip. And then we realized hers was going to expire last year as well. So that's been a huge problem for us. It's really bad that I don't have a license for quite some time. For her, it's only a backup plan. She would never drive under normal circumstances and had not driven for several years at that point, and it was quite a surprise. And she was very unhappy that she needed to drive when she did, but hers expired and is currently expired. So this has been a complicated situation for us because I typically do the driving for many different things. Sorry, I have the hiccups here in Texas. And so we had this problem that we had no easy way for me to come back and get my license. We had to wait until we had a planned trip. The family was coming up for Christmas, and we needed to do it then. So we had to go the year without a license. Texas allows you to go 2 years before renewal. So we had some time from a legal perspective before we had to renew, as long as I wasn't driving. So that was a big scheduled thing. We came back in December, did our Christmas trip, and then a few days into January went to do the renewal just before we flew back because we were not able to schedule anything before then, and the computer system was down for all of Texas, and they didn't even make an attempt to bring it up for a week that we were there. And they're like, you have to come back in a week. There's no way we're going to have it before then. And I'm like, but we're flying back. We flew in for this. What am I supposed to do? And they're like, sorry. So there was no way for me to renew, and I had used my days in the U.S. So I didn't have free days to be in the U.S. to deal with anything. So that was a big problem. We get a limited amount of time in the United States. So we can't just come back willy-nilly to do things. If we plan for it, it's really not a big deal. But under normal circumstances, we try to use all the time that we are allotted for the United States as much as possible so that we get that time with family, right? And for many people, I constantly get asked, oh, you're going to be in the U.S. Can you, make some time for me, come do something? Add a few days to your trip. And that answer is always going to be no. People need to understand that we are, and this is true for nearly everyone who is a full-time expat, the way the United States works. As long as we are full-time expats, we get very limited time in the United States, roughly 30 days. And for most of us, especially those of us with kids, we need that time with family. And so if I'm going to be somewhere, I'm going to be with family, either in Texas or New York. And that is it. There's not going to be any additional time for anyone else, which is unfortunate, but it is very cheap and easy and unlimited for people to be able to come and visit me. So if you're an American and you hope that I would come visit you, it's not that I don't want to see you, it's I have to prioritize that tiny bit of time that I get to be with family. But anyone who wants to come see me, that is not a problem. Nicaragua allows all of you in, and none of you have a time limit on it, and it is so cheap that chances are it'll be cheaper for you to come to Nicaragua and see us than to not come see us, right? It is so cheap to be in Nicaragua that the cost of the flight is often covered by how cheap the food and stuff is. That's a bit extreme, but your trip could easily be, you know, not cost you anything. It could be a free, it could be a break even. So that is why we never go see anyone. It's not that I don't want to go see people. I truly do. I wish I had loads of time to hang out with everyone. It is not plausible, and it never will be. So that's, unless the U.S. changes those rules, that's not going to change. So I had to wait until I had more days and was able to come back to the U.S. and able to renew my driver's license. So we waited as little as possible and rushed back down as soon as we had days again, and came. And so that was this trip. So that's a big thing. If you're an American living abroad, you often have to deal with this careful time management of your time back in the U.S. Now, some people never come back. Then you don't have to worry about that. And some people come back a lot and just give up the expat benefits and never get classified as being foreign from the U.S. That's fine, but you give up some of the financial benefits, which for some people are pretty minor, for some people are pretty big. For us, just because of our lifestyle and our ages, it's pretty significant. So it's important that we're able to maintain that. It's a big part of our cost savings living abroad. We can't really afford not to do it, and it impacts every bit of our lives. So it's a big thing, and so it's something to be aware of as Americans. If you are from some countries, you're able to travel and just go back and forth all that you want. Other places have a tendency to be like, no, you just have to go. Like, you chose to leave, now you're gone. There's no coming back until you're ready to actually return. The U.S. actually isn't by any stretch the worst. It's one of the better. In many of these things, these are things that people don't do very often and don't realize how hard they are to do from anywhere. And the U.S. actually is pretty good with many of these things. So especially living in a place like Nicaragua and interacting with people from many different countries who are attempting to live abroad, as Americans, we actually have some of the best scenarios overall in a practical sense. So that has been good. Right, but that's an important part of the expat life that people often overlook, is the managing your home country. People have a tendency to either completely ignore it and think, oh, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to think about it at all. And the other half of people have some wild ideas and think that the moment you set a foot outside the country and try to travel, that your house is taken from you and all your paperwork is seized and your banks are closed. I can't figure out the things that people think happen when you travel abroad. It's pretty wild, and it's amazing how many people are willing to travel, given how many people believe these unbelievable things happen to them. They think that their right to their Social Security is gone. They think that their ability to work in the U.S. is gone. They think their right to return doesn't exist. Every time I'm just amazed by the things that people have added as complete assumptions, and that they overlook that the average, 50% of Americans will travel to other countries at some point, and it's a thing you do casually, or that your job could take you somewhere. It's something you do casually. Like, I want to go to Mexico for the weekend. I want to go to Europe next summer, right? No one ever says that and says, oh, but I have to sell my house. I have to give up my passport. I give up my Social Security for doing this. I'm not employable in the U.S. anymore. Like, of course you are, right? Like, traveling and going on vacation does not nullify your life in the United States, but many people actually believe it does and are still willing to go abroad, which is an amazing statement as to their willingness to travel. But also an amazing statement to how poorly the United States educates its populace as to how things work within the United States, or how little faith people have in how the government operates. Since we are here using the time, and I had to allot a lot of time in case there was any problem with the driver's license. So I scheduled my driver's license appointment within the first 12 hours of arriving in Texas, and then gave myself a full week in case anything went wrong like it did last time. Had I given myself a full week, we would have had at least some chance of things being repaired last time and saving a trip. So we could not afford to take any chances with it this time. So we booked all the allotted time that I possibly could, just in case. And so that gave me quite a bit of extra time because things went great. So we scheduled this time to work in our storage unit in our bodega here in Texas. So luckily everything's very close. My wife's family is nearby. Our storage unit is here. My driver's license stuff is here. The airport is here. We're able to stay at a hotel right by the airport. Like everything's pretty close and simple. So that worked out pretty well. So we got several days that we were able to work in the storage unit to try to prep things. And we'll talk about that, I guess, because that is a big thing. People are really interested in how people handle or plan for storage. Now, one of the things I tell people a lot is that don't do what I did. We made huge mistakes in our storage. We decided long ago, I won't go into the lengthy detail. I think we did this on a live stream recently, but we've had a storage unit for something like 20 years. And for a very long time, probably 5 to 10 years, we had an extremely large storage unit in New York that we didn't have to pay for. My father built it on the farm. That was probably a 20 by 20 it may have been a 20 by 20. I don't think it was that big, but it was closer to that than to anything else. And so it was big enough to move around in. It was big enough that it had aisles that we could go down. We used to own so many things. We had so many pieces of furniture because both my wife and I, for a long time, right, we didn't have kids for many years, and we were both fully adults when we met. So we both had apartments or houses full of furniture. I had a large house. I had a 3,500 square foot house about the time that she and I met. Plus, I've had my own company, right, for most of my adult life, essentially my entire adult life. And so that company has accumulated furniture and things, right, corporate things, you know, cables and boxes and memorabilia, whatever, at a pace that normal people would not accumulate. Just the act of having a business tends to have a bunch of stuff. It's sort of like having a few more people in the family who are purchasing things at large scale. Now, they're less interesting things, but they still have desks, chairs, posters, computer bits, right? There's that extra mouse, this extra keyboard, this extra cable, this adapter, all these little things, and they tend to end up in the house because we didn't have physical offices with a bunch of storage units to throw that stuff in. So that storage for the company was always shared with us. And so we had Domenica's life of storage, my life of storage, and we moved around a lot, way more than anyone else we've ever known. So we were constantly moving, and I had been moving a lot when I was younger. And so having a storage unit with tons of stuff was really necessary for us throughout our lives. Because we got together as adults and went several years without kids, we had dual income. We accumulated a lot of things over the years. We lived in a lot of different places. So there was a lot of time that we would own multiple houses or a house and an apartment and need to have duplicates of, you know, microwaves and all kinds of things because we would have two places to live. That meant that when we weren't living in them, well, what do you do with them? Well, they go into the bodega because we're easily going to need them again, because we did on a regular basis. And so basically our bodega, our storage unit in New York turned into this giant like store of furniture and computer parts and video games and old, like that's where all of our movies were stored. That's where all my music was stored. That's where all of our books were stored. That's where all of and then once we had kids, as soon as they outgrew something, well, that's where it went. We didn't have to throw it away. It went into storage. And because the storage was so convenient, it became sprawling. And so easily the storage unit was nearly the size of this hotel room. And going into it was an amazing thing, right? My father had rigged things up so some of the furniture was hanging from the ceiling. You could go under things, and he had big industrial shelving in there. So there's always, you know, places that things could hide. It was an adventurous thing, and sometimes we would go a year without going into it, and then we would step into it and be like, oh, I forgot how big it is. I forgot how much stuff we have. So this legacy of this storage unit has followed us, you know, as we've moved, because we went from that to very quickly moving to Europe. Once we had kids, we moved quite young with our kids, and so everything that we accumulated had to go into storage. We kind of used storage units as our pivoting point for moving abroad, but we had to move from New York to Texas because the farm was sold, and during the time that we were living abroad, so there's these complications with that. So we ended up getting a large storage unit here in Texas, getting rid of as much as we reasonably could, which was an awful lot, and going down to fitting in a 10 by 10 storage unit, packed every single inch. Like the door could barely close. It was stacked to the ceiling. It was crazy. So we've had all of that all this time. This is a big mistake. What we should have done, if we could go back, and this is what I try to advise you guys about, is if we could go back and make some of these decisions again, now, understanding what our lives would be like. And of course, hindsight is 2020. We didn't know that we would move to Nicaragua when we put things in. We didn't know how inaccessible the storage unit would become. There's so many things we just weren't really well prepared for, that we made bad decisions. And having the storage unit that was so large and so full meant that in reality, we had to have every single person who had something in that storage unit together at the same time. And we all got quite a bit older while doing this. And when we started, all of us were able to lift the heavy things in. We didn't need help. And by the time we're going to do anything with it, we can't. We all have bad backs and different types of medical issues, and we get tired quickly, and we have very limited time because we don't have a house near the storage unit. So we can't, and we don't have a truck. So we can't take a bunch of things out, maneuver them to a house, sort through them, take them back, and sort through. There's no room to do that. It would take years of doing that because we have to go in, spend an entire day shuffling a few things around, get a few bins out. And then what are you going to do? We can't take them anywhere. We go through them. We have no trash there. We can't throw things away. We just can't do anything. It's really limiting. So we basically ended up trapping ourselves, which that's the big mistake. What we should have done is know we were making the decision that we were going to be moving abroad. And even if it wasn't going to be Nicaragua, it was going to be somewhere. And we should have eliminated absolutely everything that was not necessary. We should have gone to such a bare amount of stuff. And of course, we should have donated and sold as much as possible, not throw it away. But we really should have cut it down so far and put it into a place where we were prepared to ship it if that's what we were going to do, or better, just get to a point where you don't need to ship things. Now, for us, we do have a number of things that are my children's, and because we have failed to give them a permanent home that's really stable throughout their lives, we want them to have a lot of the things from their lives. And a lot of them is stuffed animals. A lot of it, I mean, so many stuffed animals, so many Legos, so many memorable toys from when they were young. These things are really important because they don't have their home from when, say, 2015, we lived in southern Spain. The clothing that they have from that era, of course, is gone. And they didn't have a classroom to attend because they homeschooled. And, the home is a place they could, in theory, rent again, but it's far away and just so disconnected. The toys that they had at that time represent more or less the only physical tie that they have in any way to that part of their lives. And so those things have a lot of important stability, a lot of important connection. So having young children and living like this, there are some things that we feel are important. Of course, they're older now, and now they're at that age where I want to be able to give them these things back and be like, remember these toys, remember these times in our lives. And it's important for me too, because time flies, and it's so hard to believe how old my children are. And sometimes huge gaps. It's like, it sometimes feels like my children just teleported in as nearly adults, and you easily disconnect from all these years. And I was home with them all these years, right? I didn't have these gaps away from them. We've been together so much time. And so for all of us having these connections, so for us, we do have to ship things. We do have to send things down. But if we'd have done a really good job of selecting just the things we truly need, we could send them down in barrels, as we talk about in the WhatsApp group. For expats, you can do a lot cheaper shipping if you could get it down to small items and really have it well planned. But like Bill, who's doing some shipping and talking about using barrels, he's packing those barrels himself. He lives in Canada part-time, and so he's able to pack his own barrels. He's able to send them and then collect them on the other end and unpack them. So he's able to put in time on both ends. So we were picturing that that's what we would do, but we can't. We do not get time in the United States, and we don't have the energy when we're here, and it's so far from anywhere when we don't have our own car. My gosh, we didn't think this through. And so we can't do that sorting and packing on this end ever. And that makes it that we're really trapped. Either we just keep waiting. So what on this trip, Paul and I went through, there was a very large amount of stuff that we actually did clear out. The storage unit is noticeably less packed than it was before, but still packed to a point that we can't do anything more without a crew and a huge amount of money and time and effort. And what we decided is that at this point, if we were to put in any more time, we would not see any gains for it. At this point, we can't move to a different storage unit and save any real money. And we can't throw anything away and save any real money. We're at a point where we need to get a half a container, a 20-foot container, have a crew simply take everything from the storage unit and put it in there, possibly on pallets, and ship it. And that is just what we have to do. And the sooner we do it, the sooner we stop paying $250 per month, which is not crippling, but that's a noticeable amount of money. That is the minimum wage for a worker in Nicaragua. That's an entire employee we could add to the household if we didn't have this storage unit, more or less, or noticeable amount of money that we could use on going out to eat or groceries or whatever. That's an amount of money that you feel losing every month. So we want to make that stop going away, and we want to have the things. So our plan is that we're going to ship this storage unit as soon as we reasonably can, which we're hoping is September, and we're not going to take anything more out of it, because what's in it is no single item that is so heavy that we can't move it individually. So we don't need a crew to do anything from here on in, other than just packing the storage container, the shipping container. And there's nothing that we could remove from it that would lower the cost of shipping. So at this point, everything that's in there, we might as well have with us in Nicaragua. And if there's anything we end up not needing, we can just donate it once we're there. A shipping container is quite a bit larger than the storage unit. So we decided that the logical thing is to buy a shipping container, ship it to Nicaragua, and then put it on a pad, add a door to it, and it's our new storage unit. We know that we need a storage unit, a bodega, for the rest of our lives. We've needed it our whole lives up until now. That is not going to go away. And honestly, I love having one. I like that my house does not have to have all of this stuff in it. I do not want all these millions of things that are in plastic bins cluttering my house. I don't have an attic. I don't have a basement, right? That's not how Nicaraguan houses work, which is something that may shock you, right? If you're coming from like New York and you're used to both, like suddenly you have a lot less extra space that you don't think about for storage. So having an outside bodega is the answer to that. And for us, having a good weather-sealed, very secure, very large storage unit that we can put nice shelves in, organize things. Of course, we will clear out things we don't need. We'll add things that we have here in Nicaragua, and then we will have this very well organized shipping container / storage unit that is ours to keep, that is on our property with our house, that will be as large or larger than the storage unit that my father had made all those years ago that was so useful for us for so long. And that will be our answer to keeping all that stuff. So we think that that is actually a really, really good answer at the end of the day. Of course, it's a lot of money to get the storage unit down there. But once we do it, it's all going to be over. We're not going to pay that money every month. And that in 1 year is $2,400. So it only takes like 2, maybe 3 years to pay for the entire process of shipping down, which, yes, that's a bunch of money to come up with, but the monthly will cover it in a noticeable amount of time, make our lives that much cheaper. And then we can all use those items, sell those items, or my children can enjoy having the memories and stuff that they're hoping to have. So that is the practical thing. So that we put in a few days getting that ready. It is now ready, and my wife should be here in September, hopefully able to actually manage the shipping of it without me, and she'll have a crew and stuff. So that is our plans. That's where we are. So we're calling it a successful week for the storage unit. But what I want to prepare you guys for is I really think it's so important to simply get to so few things that you don't need to ship them. Maybe you need to send that barrel, right? Maybe you need to send some boxes. Maybe every so often you take stuff in your luggage. Of course, there are things you're going to want to bring. But overall, I think getting to the point where you're looking at a few bins in most cases. I know some people really want to take furniture. Some people have big things that their memories or they're special to them and they're just unwilling to do without them. I understand. Trust me, I understand. But when you can get down to digitize every piece of paper, digitize every photograph, get everything down to just little boxes, make sure individual items can be moved, and find a way to use barrels or Optima or whatever, Envio's Fast Track, send them down and minimize to that point. We wish we had done that. Because of the kids, I don't think we could have. If it wasn't for the kids, I think my wife and I, had we understood what it was going to be like moving and what it was going to be like maneuvering stuff in the United States, I think we could have gotten down to so little that either we would have brought it all down in our luggage over a period of years, which is one option, or we would have put it in boxes and shipped it like with the barrels, like 1 or 2 barrels would have been enough, and we would have gotten everything relatively cheaply and made our lives really simple. Even with what we have now, I think shipping in barrels would be the better things to do, but we don't have the ability to pack the barrels. We don't have the people to do all that stuff to pare it down, because if we could do it ourselves, we could do it. But because we have to have other people do it, it's so expensive, it would be cheaper to just ship it all and not put in the extra effort. So that is really what's killing us, is the logistics of the logistics, and not the shipping itself. So obviously my main thing was going to the driver's license bureau, getting that done, and that was super smooth. So there was a lot of trepidation coming into the US, but border control was awesome. That was fast and smooth. So many people have told me you gotta have global entry, or that they love it. It's the best thing they've done. So one, I travel where that is used so little. I don't know why it would matter at all, but coming in, things were so fast. I actually don't see where global entry could have sped me up more than a couple minutes. And I had to wait for other people anyway. So unless everyone had it, it didn't make much sense. So that was all very successful, and just our logistics of the week were very good. We rented a car, we've been driving around. We have a Toyota RAV4, which I absolutely hate. That is a terrible car. My gosh, it drives horribly. Visibility is terrible. It is not a good car. I'm really shocked after having used quite a few Toyotas in Nicaragua, but those are 5-speeds, and dealing with an automatic, it is atrocious. No control. It's very jerky. Even as you're taking the brake on and off, it's lurching around. Absolutely hate the car. But we've been able to get around. We're in this very industrial part of North Texas, south of Spring, which is super boring, but we're on 8, and it's very practical for getting to things. We're at the Home 2 Suites, which I've talked about. That's been great. Managed to do a live stream from here on Thursday, so it's been a very productive week. I've managed to make a show every day. I've managed to do some editing. Right now, I'm filming this as I'm partway packed with the new suitcase. I'm about to take a nap. We have to fly early tomorrow morning, but we got to drop off the car a little bit early, and Paul has some weird luggage he's got to deal with. So we're going to get to the airport like 4.5 hours before our flight, which is not ideal, but better than being late, and it does give us a lot of buffer for things. So that's where we are. I keep awkwardly stopping the video, so I'm going to make the transition into my notes on being in Texas, because that is our week. That's our logistics. All that is done. And so there's a number of things that I've observed since I've been here, because a lot has changed, I think, since the last time I was here, or over a period of time, but also I observe things differently. In some cases, I'm more noticeable of things, but one thing that's really noticeable, and the reason I'm stopping the video at odd times, is because allergies are affecting me. I've not really had much in the way of allergies in Nicaragua for the last 5 years. When we're here, we notice it. Now, Paul thinks it's the smog, but I know there's a lot of pollens that are different here. And so I've noticed I'm very congested. I'm coughing all the time. I got tickles in my nose. So I really noticed that, but I made some notes about some things. So one of the things that I've really noticed on this trip, and I've noticed this on a lot of trips, but the food is just so bad. I feel like the quality has gone down quite a bit. Sorry, I had to stop the video there for a minute. There was an entire pack of children trying to break into my room, which can happen here because there's problems with the doors. So I had to say something, because I don't need people pounding on my door, and they were trying the door handle, slamming the door, trying to break into the room. I don't know what was going on, and they could hear them complaining, they locked it. I'm like, yeah, because it's my hotel room. Anyway, so one thing that I've noticed, and over again, but this trip really hit home, was just how bad the food is. Now, we did manage to find some good food. We were really happy with Mr. Soy Sauce, of all things. What a weird name, but it's like a Panda Express knockoff. We were very happy with that, so shout out to them. We had a pretty good experience at the Black Bear Diner, but it didn't knock my socks off, but it was good. We were happy with the food. I did try Taco Bell. It was kind of normal, but the prices have gone up. Overall, the food is not as expensive, I thought, as people had been saying. It is more expensive than it's been, but I thought it was going to be a little bit more shocking than it actually was, or maybe we've just been so conditioned to how expensive we expected it to be that we didn't really get hit with that too much. But the actual quality, the number of times that people would recommend a restaurant, we would go to it and then be really disappointed, was quite surprising. So we've just have generally a bad experience. And we went to some places like Schlotsky's, which Paul just loves Schlotsky's. I've never had a good meal at Schlotsky's, so I'm always loath to go. But we went, and the food was actually gross. We actually threw it away. And even Paul, who's this massive fan, he's like, no, that was gross. Like, that so bad. So that was, so just the quality of food was something that shocked us quite a bit. Now, something that I don't think I put in my notes, but when we went to Schlotzsky's, and it was attached to a gas station, right? So much food in America is attached to gas stations, which in Nicaragua, there's a lot of food in gas stations too, but there are less restaurants and more like gas station mini marts. So there's a certain expectation. But here in the United States, quite often it's actually like regular restaurants, chain restaurants. Like you're on Uber Eats and you're going to order yourself food, and it could be coming from a gas station, right? It's really weird. And people told me on the live stream that nearly all the food you order from restaurants you don't know is almost all ghost kitchens of restaurants you know. So they're like, all the Burger Den and the Burger this and the Burger that. They're like, it's all just Burger King or some other burger place repackaging, slightly different food, all coming out of the same kitchen at different prices, which I didn't run into that, but it was something that I was told and hadn't thought about that could be a big thing. One of the restaurants that we tried that was very disappointing was Mr. Beast. And then once I tried it, people told me, they're like, oh yeah, no, it's terrible. I was really surprised though by how unimpressive that was. And I tried eating burgers all week. And honestly, the best hamburger I was able to find the entire week was Burger King, which was excellent. They did a great job. But like, is that really the best I'm able to get? Just really surprised by the drop in quality and drop in selection. It used to be when I would come to the United States and I go on Uber Eats and all that stuff, I'd have a big selection, but at least shockingly large living in Nicaragua, right? To Americans who like, that's a normal selection, but there's a lot of variety. And I talk about how much we miss that variety, and being back, I'm not sure that there was any more variety here than there is in Leon. So using Uber Eats, I was just as limited. I would see lots of listing of restaurants, and to Patricia's point, maybe this is because there's all ghost kitchens. Nearly every place that I found had basically the same food. So there were a number of restaurants, but the amount of variety was quite low. There was the burger places, there was the pizza places, of which super low variety, and this is Texas, so the quality is no better than Nicaragua. There's no reason to get pizza here as a New Yorker. Lots of wings places, lots of Chinese restaurants. Now, there were a few things that I could get here that I can't get other places in Nicaragua. Like I was able to get Indian from the Indian Deck of all places. Fantastic. Shout out to them. Their food was amazing. So there is some good food. We had a couple of wins, but mostly it was losses. And some of the biggest wins were like Burger King. So the food quality and food selection, and very noticeably, the food selection is a fraction of what it was in the past, which leads to what we noticed as we drove around is that everything is closed. I've never seen Texas like this. Texas has been such a boom location for so long that we're used to everything just growing and growing, and nothing is ever empty because people are always fighting to get in. So if a business fails, another one is right in. And now we're driving through entire neighborhoods where every apartment is rotting away, roofs collapsed, windows gone, the outside of the buildings just destroyed, entire shopping plaza after shopping plaza vacant and abandoned all over. Like, Paul and I just started driving around going, empty, empty, empty. Like, it's crazy how much business has failed in the United States. I've never seen it like this in my lifetime. And so that was really shocking. And of course, the restaurants are collapsing the same as everything else. So that obviously is contributing to the lack of variety. And of course, people have to cut corners because obviously the money is not there. So the quality has gone down. And Paul and I drove 20 minutes because a new Taco Bueno had opened, and Google's like, yes, it's open. And we're like, Taco Bueno is the best. So good. That is one of those things I miss so much. Now, in New York, I've got foods that I really miss. In Texas, the thing that I miss is Taco Bueno. And so we drove to Taco Bueno, 20 minutes. We got there. It's in this beautiful street that's like this new highway with lots of new stuff. It's near the airport. Like, you can't go wrong. Brand new construction on the Taco Bueno. Only been there for 6 months, pulled in, and they had just closed a few days ago. Completely went out of business. They didn't make it in they didn't have enough money to keep it open long enough to make it, right? And it's Taco Bueno. It's a Texas chain. It's the best tacos, Tex-Mex, like Taco Bell style, like fast food tacos. It is the hands down best in Texas. It is so good. It's hard to imagine one going out of business, maybe during the pandemic. And it's already out of business in this record time. never seen anything like that. And so that was really depressing, because that was the one thing we wanted. We were so excited to go to it and put in so much effort getting there, and then was not able to. But the amount that business has failed, and the selection and variety and quality that we were used to in the U.S. has visibly gone away in just 6 months. Because I was here in December, and it was not like that. So this is a very new thing that really caught me off guard. I was not prepared for that at all. What things look like, just the wasteland, right? Hotels that have closed up, places with broken windows, apartments collapsed and rotting away, and block after block. Like, the scale of it all is just really amazing. I actually have a train going by. I had no idea there were train tracks there. I can see petroleum being hauled by outside the window. I was not expecting that. And so this is just a real shock as to the state of things in the U.S. and it, people often, we have conversations about people moving to Nicaragua, and they talk about visible poverty and struggles and going through neighborhoods that are rough. And of course, Nicaragua has that. It's a country with a lot of economic challenges. And of course, recording this just a couple days after Fitch has upgraded the economic status of Nicaragua, because they have such powerful cash reserves and have had so much economic growth that they're closing in on the U.S. on their bond ratings, which is really exciting. But really looking around this area, it was just shocking that you can see the collapse of the economy very visible in a lot of different ways. Another surprising thing that I don't know when this started, but we did not notice it when we were here in December, and certainly it had not been this way a year ago when we were in Florida, but the reversal of the move towards having vegetarian food available in normal restaurants. When we left Texas in 2021, we were just getting used to that many restaurants had vegetarian options. The veggie Whopper was in place. We were eating that all the time for maybe a year or two. Before that, Carl's Jr. had a really good vegetarian option here. But of course, the Carl's Jr.'s were going out of business then. Like, there were still problems from time to time. And we kept going to like local burger places that really existed. They weren't ghost kitchens. We would go in person. And they'd constantly have vegetarian options. We'd see these things occurring all over the place. Like, lots of places were adding vegetarian options at a really fast pace. And so we were really looking forward to, over time, and this did happen for the first few years, when we would come back to visit from Nicaragua, we would go to places both in the US and in Costa Rica, and we would go to a restaurant and discover, like Burger King, suddenly they had vegetarian chicken. They'd have more vegetarian items. And the grocery stores, last I checked, still did have a lot of vegetarian items. That is, to the best of my knowledge, still true. But at least in the restaurants, many of the places that used to have them now don't. And ones we expected to have them soon, long ago, still don't have them. And completely shocking places like McDonald's doesn't have a vegetarian option yet. And we did go to McDonald's anyway, because they do a filet of fish, which they don't provide in Nicaragua. And so we were like, that sounds good. Let's grab a filet of fish. I got a filet of fish, and they put Big Mac sauce on it. Like, even McDonald's is doing weird things, and it's not the same as it used to be. So just strange and weird, and the quality of everything has gone down. Paul had to return his entire meal. We waited a really long time for him to get his food at McDonald's, and it was all cold. They had let it sit around for a really long time and then gave it to him, and then had to replace it all, and then served me filet of fish with Big Mac sauce on it. And they didn't serve me. I ordered first, they fed him, and then all of his food was bad, and then I didn't get my food until he was done eating. Like, then there was no one else in the restaurant being served. It was only us. The McDonald's definitely did not hit the mark for what little bit they actually do have to offer. So that was very sad. As a vegetarian or pescatarian, like, the loss of the variety, the things that we liked about eating in the US really has gone away. Now, there were some positives. Gas is crazy cheap. I cannot believe how cheap the gas is. This has to be the cheapest period for gas I've ever witnessed. And I've witnessed some pretty cheap. Now, it's with adjusted dollars, right? Of course, I've witnessed when it was way under $1, but in adjusted dollars, it's way under my childhood dollars now. We saw it for $2.50. Now, that being said, it jumped by 20% today. The day that I'm recording this video, we saw it for $2.40 something yesterday. It was $3 today in the same street, like right here. So it is really cheap, cheapest I can remember seeing, but going up potentially really fast. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's fluctuating all over the place, but it's still surprisingly cheap. That was amazing. And the hotels were quite affordable. Now, maybe that's because no one's able to travel anymore, but with gas so cheap and hotels so cheap, you'd think people would be able to travel even if other things are not doing well. But we were able to get 80 something dollars per night. Now, of course, we're staying in a long-term stay. We took 2 rooms. I'm a Hilton Honors member. There's a whole bunch of things that come together to give us a good price, but we got a really good price on a really nice hotel for the week. So I was very surprised by that. I was expecting the prices to be quite literally double, or at least $70 more per night. So I was really happy with that. One of the biggest shockers for me is litter. Now, maybe I'm more attuned to being upset about litter because in Nicaragua it's a major problem and we're like, ugh, and we keep thinking that the US is completely clean. So I don't know how much this has changed or my paying attention to it has changed, but driving through Houston, there was litter everywhere. Just like in Nicaragua, all on the sides of the road, people just throwing their trash out the windows. It's all collected. And the one thing that's different is that Nicaragua has a much denser population of people, and the United States has big, wide areas next to the roads, lots and lots of trees and grass, and so people and houses and roads are farther apart from each other. But if you were to condense the open space in the United States to be the same space as Nicaragua between things, the amount of litter appears to be roughly the same. So in Nicaragua, you notice it more because it's compressed where it is. And then you have huge areas, of course, of the country that are just empty. But here you have, everything is so open. Like the distance between us and the end of the driveway in Nicaragua would be a city block, quite literally. An entire city block, or a small one, would exist just in that space. And so there's all those people, all that opportunity for litter, not a big open grassy area. So any litter from many more people would be in a tiny little space. But here, there's this massive field, and so there's very few people. And so the litter, it's harder to notice physically because there's so much space to hide it in. But when you actually pay attention to it, there's just as much litter. There isn't that clean US feeling that we had when I was much younger, when I was in my 20s, right? So I don't know if that's a brand new thing or I'm just attuned to it now or I'm paying attention. But I was actually quite surprised. I started noticing that I was in areas where I felt like there shouldn't be any litter. It should be completely clean. And then I started watching and it was just everywhere in the ditches. It was all collected in the ditches. And when there's a stream, there's all the trash down there. Yeah, there's some spots in Nicaragua that are just atrocious, especially in Leon, where the storm carries that. Yeah, that stuff. Here, there's other drainage systems, so that stuff gets hidden in big washes and stuff. But there was a lot of litter. Really surprised by that. Another thing that really caught us off guard, and this we kind of knew, but this feels more extreme. This has to be our own perception. But every indoor space is so cold. We went to a restaurant, a really well-known restaurant, very popular here in Houston, and we had to leave early because it was so cold that Paul, who's from Wisconsin, and me, who's from New York, could not handle being in the restaurant. We didn't have coats and jeans and stuff with us. We didn't anticipate on a day, because like today, it's 99 degrees outside. So it's not a cold day. We're not expecting to go into businesses and be so cold that we're in like arthritic pain from our joints hurting and everything. Just, it's painful to sit there. We're shaking and everyone is just like, oh no, we're not going to make it warmer. This is comfortable. And we're like, but it's 100 degrees outside. If it's this cold inside, the moment you step outside, you're going to sweat. And when you come in, you're going to freeze. Like, it's never going to be comfortable. You're forcing a situation where no one's going to be comfortable. And so we just had to leave. Like, we couldn't do it. It's so cold when it's so warm outside. It is so impractical for power, for anything. It's just, wow. Not, I remember the air conditioning being strong. I remember it being air conditioned everywhere. I do not remember people keeping it to this extreme. 99 degrees outside. The restaurant easily was 68 degrees. Because like the room I'm in now is 73, and that I'm not freezing. It's, you know, I can wear a long sleeve shirt. I can move around. I'm not sweating in any way whatsoever. It's comfortable, but, and I appreciate how cool it is. But this was so much colder than my air-conditioned hotel room, and I had no way to keep warm. Right, in a hotel, you can get into a bed or whatever. Like, it's just crazy. The last thing that I have in my notes to mention is the driving. I remember driving I've always said, you know, Texas is now driving here in Texas, we've always said is pretty bad for the United States. But in general, we think of the United States as being a pretty organized, easy to drive place. And there's loads of space and it really isn't that bad. But having now lived in Nicaragua for a number of years, having gotten used to driving and finding even Managua to not be stressful in the least, I have no problem going anywhere in the country as far as being able to drive or finding it stressful or anything like that. Driving in the US actually feels more hectic than Nicaragua. Now, as we're driving around, the thing is that we don't have kids, dogs, mothers dragging their children in front of your car, horse-drawn carts, and all kinds of things like that, super slow bikes. So in Nicaragua, things happen slow, and there's a million things on the road. What you have happening in the United States, or at least here in Houston, and Houston has always been the worst for this, it is absolutely one of the last places you want to drive in the US. What you have is extremely high speeds on very confusing highways that you'll be going down like an 8-lane highway and 2 lanes will go off on one highway and then a lane will go off over here and then there's a frontage. There's a lot of things going on and very little warning on where things go. And even Google Maps, like we complain that Google Maps doesn't work in Nicaragua. Well, it doesn't work here either. As we've been using it this week, the amount that it's wrong and doesn't know where the turns are, it's really surprising. So that seems to be more universal than we realized. But what we really notice here is the constant erratic driving. People coming up and swerving and cutting you off and just crazy stuff. Now, people do let you in. If you're coming off of like a driveway and you got to get into a road, people stop and wait for you. They actually let you in. That's so nice. We're not really used to that in Nicaragua. But when you're out on the highway and up to speed, people drive crazy and it's really stressful. I actually find you have to pay a lot more attention. You have to be a lot more alert driving here than in Managua. So that is something that when I get into a car in the US and start to drive, I feel like I'm going to be very relaxed. And in reality, I'm much more relaxed in Nicaragua than I am here. Of course, living there and dealing with it all the time, and this being a change, first time driving here in a year and a half, it must be much more. That's since my license expired, but I had not driven for quite some time before that. So it's easily more than 2 years since I've driven in the US. So of course, it feels a little bit more foreign at this point, but looking at it through a foreign lens, this is actually some pretty crazy driving, and that impression that we have that it is as organized and simple and stress-free as we imagine is definitely not the case. I was pretty taken aback by how bad the driving conditions were, and the number of near accidents that we saw, and the number of cars just destroyed everywhere, harkens back to, we see these things in Nicaragua and feel like, it's not like this in the US, and you come back and it absolutely is. The last thing that I wanted to mention is the internet. Now this is only hotel internet, right? If you go to normal places, the US has lots of fast internet, although this is Houston, which is specifically bad. But one of the things that does surprise me is the hotel here, the internet speeds here are so atrocious. I've been working so hard to do any uploads that I've been able to do the whole time that I've been here. I haven't come close to being able to upload the videos that I've made and recorded. I've got to get back to Nicaragua and get those uploads going because we have quite literally 50 times the speed of internet there as we have here in the hotel. Now, hotels always have slower, and of course there's, it's just one example. But this is a relatively, nice hotel, and what Americans accept as just, this is the internet that I use, is so different, because in Nicaragua, we would have a minimum of like 5 megabits, because what we have here is about 1. And under normal conditions, if I was to go even to a remote area like Las Piñitas, a very remote beach, go to relatively cheap hostels, I still would be expecting 50 to 100 megabits per second on fiber. Now, they probably are on fiber here, but we're limited to 1 megabit or less. The speeds of my uploads are so bad, and they fail constantly. So I can be waiting 8 hours for a single file to upload, and after 6 hours it'll time out. If I don't sit here babysitting the uploads at all times, they almost always fail. And so I can spend an entire day trying to transfer a single file because it's so slow and so unreliable. And they cut you off every morning, which is, again, just all these things that Americans accept as oh yeah, no, that's okay for hotel quality internet to be that bad. But if you're in Nicaragua, people would not be okay with that, right? They expect it to be faster, they expect it to be stable, they expect it to be on all the time. And so it's not bad here. I'm not saying that this is particularly bad. I'm just saying that we've gotten used to even very inexpensive hostels having an expectation of better quality service, at least available at the hotel. Now, how good the signal is inside the rooms here. A lot of places in Nicaragua, you have to be in that right part of the room or go out into the lobby to get that better internet. That's a real thing. The getting the actual internal Wi-Fi. So in the U.S., they're not as good at the internet access. In Nicaragua, they don't understand what Wi-Fi is, and so nobody has the skills to deploy and manage access points. And so that tends to be where the struggle is. So it is just different, but it is shocking but it also speaks to, we say this, when you travel around the world, there are a number of countries that are very technologically backwards, and one of them is the United States, that is just kind of in the middle. When you go to like Spain or Italy, these are places where people just are like, the internet? We don't use that. Try reading a newspaper, right? They actively avoid technology and modernity to a point where it's often very frustrating, and it makes doing business very hard there. The US, again, very often this stuff is like, wow, I can't believe that people would put up with this, but people so often don't have that culture of needing to get anything done, that the acceptance of some of that stuff is surprising, but real. I should mention, because this is something you would never think of, when ordering food online, the amount of time it takes to be delivered here is about 2 to 3 times as long as it is in León and Managua, which are the places that I test on a regular basis. We're used to getting food in 20 to 30 minutes, and here it's 1 to 1.5 hours for basically the same types of food. So not a huge deal, not a problem, but it is surprising that Nicaragua was able to organize those things so much more quickly. And instead of ordering just from our neighborhood, we order from anywhere in the city because we have to. It's a small city, so they got to come from the far side of the city. Here, everyone's coming from just down the street, like the local branch of whatever, and still it takes so long, even with all the highways and the high-speed cars and everything. So those are my experiences being back in the United States for a week and just dealing with day-to-day life here. Overall, it's been more pleasant and relaxing than I was expecting it to be, and far more successful, and absolutely nothing really went wrong. So I'm really happy about all of that stuff. But those are my impressions. Those are the things that I've paid attention to and noticed since we were here. I'm sure I'm missing a few things that would be interesting to comment on, but I tried to take notes whenever I could. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ScottAlanMiller. I'll put the link up on the screen. And of course, get in the show notes. Anything you could possibly want to know, how to contact me, how to support the channel, anything is down there, including our social media, and how to send in a video of yourself for a question. Really like it when people do that. Of course, get in those comments, say hello, share on social media, watch another episode, and I will see all of you from Nicaragua tomorrow.